Hello everybody, welcome to this video. It's another in the series on 100% full marks exam answers, where we're looking at real exam answers from students who achieve full marks in their exam, and we're breaking down what they did to get those high marks. Now, I want you to think about where the ticks would come in this opening paragraph to this answer. So I can tell you that there were 7 ticks across this answer, and if you're watching this in class, it'll be useful to pause the video and discuss, or even if you're just watching it at home, try and think about what is good in this answer. The examiner picked out 7 things, and this is just the opening paragraph, of course. I'm not saying that you just have to do those things to get full marks, but I'm just saying, what do you think got the marks in this paragraph? The bus rocketed through the labyrinth of city roads, the wheels screaming as the driver alternated rapidly between braking and accelerating. The engine groaned audibly with a degree of reluctance to continue. The groans radiated throughout the cold metal cage of the bus, making the windows flux inwards and outwards, over and over, to the point where they seemed as if they were about to break. A fly, gently hovering above the abyss-like asphalt, attracted to some unworldly stench, met the windshield and was obliterated. Okay, so have a little think about where would you, if you were the examiner, be giving credit here for good things. And like I say, if you're watching this in class or whatever, pause the video because I'm about to show you the answers. Okay, so here are the moments that got the marks, and this is not to say these are the only good things here, but let's talk about what's happening. So the bus rocketed through the labyrinth of city roads. The word rocketed got a tick. Why is that? Well, rocketed is a metaphor because the bus didn't literally rocket through, and it's just a use of what is often what I talk about in this question. It's almost using the sort of poetic language that you study for literature. Then we've got the word labyrinth. Now, this is an example of wide vocabulary and also spelt correctly. It's not a metaphor because a labyrinth is just a sort of complicated network of paths which is difficult to find your way around. So it's not that it's really a metaphor, because you could say that the city roads were a labyrinth, but it's a wide vocabulary. And if we put both of those together in this image, we have the bus rocketed through the labyrinth of city roads, and this is just a great example of the student thinking carefully about their language choices. So this student could have written, the bus drove quickly through the busy city roads, and it wouldn't have been as impressive, would it? But rocketed, the metaphor there, and labyrinth, this wide vocabulary, get the marks. The wheels screaming as the driver alternated rapidly between braking and accelerating. The word screaming had a tick, and that's an example of personification. And we see another one where the engine groaned with a degree of reluctance. That's more personification, because what we're doing here is giving human characteristics to something that isn't human. So the wheels are screaming, the engine is groaning, the engine is reluctant to continue. All of these things are characteristics that you couldn't actually give to a vehicle. But of course, between them, they convey this atmosphere, this sort of mood of kind of negativity and being burdened and overbearing and that kind of thing. So what we see, and I think this is worth pointing out, is not just one example of something, but the continued use of personification here. And again, along with the metaphor, it's very much using the sorts of things that we study when we're looking at poetry. What else do we have? We have at the bottom there, we have we've got the metal cage of the bus. Now the metal cage is quite interesting because you could argue this is prison imagery. Is it literally a metal cage or is it a metaphor? It's something to think about there. Of course, you could describe a bus as having a metal or being a metal cage, but it also, again, all combines with everything we've seen so far to create this mood, this kind of negative impression. And then we have the fly above the abyss-like asphalt, and abyss-like had a tick. And this is a simile, and also again a deliberate choice of vocabulary, isn't it? A kind of, it could just say, use a different word for the abyss-like, and even asphalt is quite wide vocabulary. So what I want to suggest to you is this. If you look at this answer, I don't think there's anything in it that you would look at and say, I could never do that. Now, this, of course, isn't the full answer. We'll look at a bit more of it probably next week. But what I want to suggest is that you can use these kinds of techniques, implementing some of the poetry techniques that you studied, thinking about a sort of atmosphere that you want to create, a mood that you want to create in your writing. We'll look at that next week. How do we take an atmosphere in a piece of writing and create it? There's this atmosphere of negativity, and it's created through some of these vocabulary choices and the imagery that's used. Also thinking about, I've got a simple word I can use here, but can I use a more sophisticated word? And this answer, I've got 39 out of 40, okay, so it dropped 1 mark, but still amazing to look at, I think. And I don't think there's anything in there so far that any of us would say that's impossible to do. Now, there are other good things in this answer. I'm not saying those are the only things that are good. So there's obviously some great punctuation, and there's this zooming in, isn't there? We talk about that a lot when we're looking at paper 1 question 3 for structure, starting zoomed out and zooming in and focusing here on the fly, and kind of that's that very sharp focus on one detail. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please do pick up a copy of Mr. Bruff's Guide to GCSE English Language. I've got lots of advice on paper 1 question 5. And as I said, the key thing for these questions is, if you can get full marks or even very high marks on the question 5s, it's going to be a lot easier to do really well in the rest of the paper.